Welcome, Soul Tribe. Welcome to David Berry 75's YouTube channel. I am your guest reader today, Toni, and if you'd like to guest read, contact David on his email or get a hold of him in Discord. You can send him a private message so you're not showing the world what you're doing. It'd be a nice surprise to see other people reading. All right, and we're going to continue on today, and we're on chapter 6 of the Stellar Men, called The Illusion of True Knowledge. All right. All true knowledge arises in the mind and not in the intelligence. Having a mind distinguishes the hermeticist from the layman who, as we have seen in the last chapter, is a mental cripple. The hermeticist has a mind he himself has formed and developed, and this enables him to reach states of higher consciousness in which he has access to absolute truth. Physical mind is a magnetic orb established between two poles: the brain, negative pole in man, and sex, positive pole in man. In women, the brain is the positive pole and the sex, the negative. This orb is formed exclusively by the Hermetic student's work on himself and is the result of lengthy efforts. From a higher spiritual point of view, the mind is the philosopher's stone through which the initiate attains a continuous transformation of base metals, ignorance and lies, into gold, true knowledge, and immortality of his own individuality. The mind is the stomach of intelligence. Lacking this, sapiens never digest the information he possesses, which develops into undigested intelligence, a glutton for knowledge. He devours information about many things, which is incorporated into the cerebral archive without ever releasing the quintessence of its secret. The immense mass of information possessed by a moderately cultured individual is precisely what gives him the false sensation of knowing many things. He feels morally empowered to give all kinds of opinions, while remaining in ignorance of his mental disability, which in the end is a lack of intelligence. The more fame or prestige an author has, or the more lessons studied by the individual, the greater will be his intellectual blindness. If the individual has a professional title gained from long studies in university classrooms, it is practically guaranteed that his intelligence has been totally and incurably damaged by becoming stratified or even petrified at very low levels. The student does not assimilate his education due to an insufficient state of awareness. The student limits himself to memorizing and juggling infinite combinations of the data he possesses with acrobatics, which gives him extraordinary intellectual agility, the absolute certainty of being very intelligent and extraordinarily capable in his profession. Nevertheless, this treadmill of knowledge fails him laminately when he is faced with practical situations in real life, except the application of mathematical concepts. It is thus that in spite of all that sapiens know, there will be no evolution in his internal nature throughout history, nor is there any real indication of that such evolution is approaching. Man has been converted into the carrier of innumerable concepts, which each day are more numerous and complex. But in the individual himself, there is no change. From this, we can recognize sapiens' ultimate vulnerability, his ability to apply the information he carries to his own transformation and evolution. This impossibility is so vast that the knowledge possessed does not allow him to see himself and evaluate himself impartially, effectively, objectively, and in a higher manner. It's a fact that the individual cannot see himself and therefore in full of false concepts about his own importance, value, and capability. The most he can aspire to is to better the material conditions in which he lives, and guided by a subconscious impulse, endeavors to reach the stars with the secret hope of finding a superior galactic race which will teach him to live as a human being and enable him to leave his animal state. So it is that many people live with the hope that flying saucers are real, longing to meet extraterrestrial beings who can, in some way, help them to better themselves. As with all things in life, sapiens cling to far off hopes or illusions created to elude the real possibilities within his reach. It is much easier to dream of flying saucers or exploring any kind of religious dogma than to dedicate oneself to the work of one's spiritual advancement. Sapiens is basically a lawfer and lawfer, and as such, always seeks the easiest path and least effort possible. He is fascinated by simple belief and ignorant faith, bedazzled by anything that can be acquired without effort, either by act and grace of the Holy Spirit or by chance. Thus, sapiens create all kind of absurd, subjective, illogical, and arbitrary dreams. The content of the dreams is not important if he can cling to convenient illusions, just as the shipwrecked person clings to a board in order to save himself. In search of his handhold, the frustrated person is converted to a religious faith and is able to thus free himself from the undesirable I. This satisfies a passion for individual renunciation and allows him to disappear in the mass movement which he has entered. Eric Hoffer, the great philosopher and thinker, refers to this when he says faith is a holy cause, is to a considerable extent a substitute for the lost faith in ourself. With the strategy, the individual fully develops into a loafer, as he need not even think. He only needs to accept the religious dogma with which he has become affiliated with, or out of judgment, without judgment or analysis. Only those who make effort beyond duty and necessity are not loafers. People people generally live dreaming of some future event which will radically change their lives. It may be the expectancy of a stroke of luck which will make them millionaires, finding a great love, or the arrival of superior forces or causes which will mold their destiny into a happier state. Needless to say, this future illusion ruins or annuls all real and present intentions of attaining by methodical and sustained efforts whatever the individual desires. Sapien is truth a professional loafer, mainly because in the cerebral activity and his conduct, he audaciously dopes himself with a big dream drug. The drug exists, chemically speaking, but only within the human organism, where it induces somnamblastic sleep. Undoubtedly, the laziness also extends the boundaries of intelligence, and people do not wish to complicate their lives thinking about difficult things. It is much easier to follow those ideas which best justify the individual's temperament. or way of life. For example, if a person is irresponsible, he will enthusiastically enter a religious or political movement which will free him from all responsibility through his unconditional surrender to a superior divine power, to a psychological oneness with a group in which no one is responsible for anything because it is anonymous. A cowardly person will choose a movement which will deprive him of the largest possible quantity of vital experiences, which are a threat to his mental or physical tranquility. Under the impulse of intellectual laziness, sapiens rapidly fill his brain with as much information as he is capable of absorbing, and which he endeavors to memorize as, as exactly as possible. In this way, he hopes to have prefabricated solutions for every situation that arises in his life, which he falls back on with lightning speed, without making any effort to analyze the particular problem or conflict he is facing. With this in mind, he rapidly and superficially absorbs all his studies, carrying out the process we call a dream apprenticeship. Apprenticeship is a low state of awareness, zero from the point of view of essential truth. In this condition, the individual gives great importance to the prestige of the source of his information. The higher the source of this prestige, whether a professor, an author, or an institution, the more bindingly the student will accept the concepts poured into him without taking the trouble of deep anal- analyze or trouble to deeply analyze them. Also, following the same standards, he will imitate the behavior of famous people who he admires and take on the ideologies of these individuals as his own. In time, this person reaches a complete intellectual programming, which entails the death of his intellect, which is converted into mechanical or dead intelligence. No matter how brilliant the individual may be, we can be certain that if he is in this condition, he will be a mental cripple. Due to his cerebral myopia, he will be incapable of visualizing the enormous magnitude of his ignorance and be limited to living within the egg of his own knowledge. Within his mental egg, the individual is warm and comfortable, completely free from danger of arguments and facts, which may oblige him to think and perhaps reach a complete revision of his intellectual baggage. This man has already formed his mechanism of adaptation and defense and clings blindly to the concepts he knows and understands, which constitutes his cultural lineage. At all times during his life, when this individual is faced with phenomena, theories, or knowledge which are not filled in his cultural depository, he will vehemently reject them if they contradict his knowledge or simply discredit them if they are unknown to him. If at any time he becomes aware of new or surprising topics, he will feel psychologically threatened, especially if they are in conflict with his interests and principles. We know that the psychological personality is integrated more substantially when it starts from separate behavioral units. In practice, all experiences lived by an individual should be duly integrated into his personality. Nevertheless, the phenomenon already described in reference to intelligence also occurs with personality. There is a very important difference between integrated experience and assimilated experience. People learn very much less than they believe from their experiences, as these are very frequently integrated into the personality in the form of cliches and empty stereotyped symbols, which do not contribute beneficially to the individual's awareness. They become fixed, empty rules for conduct, which the individual blindly follows without real discernment. The person seeks refuge in these programmed directives and hides behind them for protection, remaining comfortable and inert in reference to anything that involves real intelligence. We call this as simply a protection and maintenance circuit, the egg. Within this, man keeps his infantilism and lack of maturity intact, avoiding any traumatic shock, which might result from facing new realities and life challenging demands. It is for this reason that people automatically reject any new idea, which is not part of their cerebral program, no matter how valuable or notable it may be. On the other hand, they accept a priori any suggestion which is apparently in agreement with their beliefs, no matter how precarious this may be in the light of a deeper analysis. In truth, we must conclude that the art of thinking has been lost to humanity, if humanity ever possessed it, and has been supplanted by the art of imitation and informative memorization. It is due to this that the wisest and most illustrious men, clever at solving profound scientific problems, completely fail in their attempt to solve difficulties of a vital and practical nature, such as personal conflicts of an emotional nature, or understanding the wisely counseling their children. The organization of society into institutions created for control and aid make a civilized world where all is foreseen. The state has a solution for everyone, and even if no one is satisfied with government help, there is at least a solution, whether for medical, educational, or legal problems, etc. Everything is organized in such a way that it is difficult for an individual to face serious problems or to go out and hunt for food as prehistoric man did. There are typical solutions for all. Man today knows that he may face hunger, but improbable he will die of starvation, which was a mass phenomenon in other ages. This relative security is precisely that which encourages intellectual laziness, as the person is not pressured in any truly threatened manner. He may really need to use his brain, and in content with placid mediocrity, free from intellectual conflict. There are very few individuals who seek total truth or the essential key to all that has exists, and will exist. Wise men are content to be semi-wise, reaching only the knowledge of some of the scientific disciplines, arts, or letters, remaining in total the absolute ignorance of these own human nature and the occult laws which govern life in the universe. These men never become aware of the secret of light, limiting themselves to describing different phenomena without ever explaining what a thing is, only stating how it is, which is not difficult to discern. The Hermeticist proceeds inversely. He starts by studying and coming to know the vital keys of the universe, with which he then takes possession of the golden thread, which is the common nexus of all vital phenomena. It is as if endeavoring to learn what a peach is, a science proceeding to study the skin and the flesh without even penetrating to the pit. The Hermeticist does not bother about either the skin or the flesh, as once the seed is planted, it will multiply its fruit. The Hermeticist studies the rest of the book written by the semi-wise. The true sage, aware of absolute truth, has access to any of the relative truths when he so desires. Similar to agnostics, Hermeticists maintain that genuine knowledge cannot be manufactured. They add something more important, which is the intrinsic principle of Hermetic philosophy. The fact that the impossibility for the existence of genuine knowledge is maintained only by special conditions in the consciousness of sapien. However, if these conditions are altered and modified by Hermetic techniques, understanding will occur in the individual. This will gradually enable him to reach true knowledge. Thus, the fraternity of magicians has been formed, uh, possessed of knowledge and beyond good and evil, of knowledge which transcends all polarity and partiality. Of necessity, this science must be absolutely impartial and impersonal. The conceptual perspective of sapiens is built up to a great extent by his beliefs. For when man believes something will sufficient necessity when man believes something with sufficient certainty, he confers on these beliefs the category of knowledge, which in the majority of cases are only a reflection of his opinions, hopes, likes, or dislikes. Naively, many thinkers and men of science base all their hope for the betterment of the human race on a major or massive development of sapient knowledge, intelligence. Believing in this way a certain kind of paradise on earth can be reached. These people, unaware of Hermetic science, do not realize that an intelligence which serves the beast cannot contribute anything which will ultimately be really beneficial for man. Actually, between two beasts, one stupid and the other intelligent, which one is more dangerous? Naturally, the more intelligent one is. Intelligence without consciousness inevitably leads man to chaos, but with the difference that the chaos is more complete, sophisticated, greater, and improved in relation to the upheaval provoked by mediocre brains. Each individual develops into the web of his own blindness, eagerly seeking to enforce his position and discredit that of others. The horrible frequency we find persons who take positions which are absolutely foolish, irrational, and spurious, but who are completely and sincerely convinced that they are right. They possess the truth and they believe that everyone else is mistaken. Furthermore, they suffer tremendously from the lack of understanding that they receive from people. Basically, what these people wish to obtain is license and acknowledge for their ideas and to achieve the recognition or importance in life which nature has denied them. Some may say hermeticists believe themselves to be owners of the truth. From this point forward, we declare that no one has a monopoly on truth, but that we are the real possessors of Hermetic art, as this is ours by spiritual aristocracy and not by blood. Still, aristocracy begins and ends with the individual and is inherited only from oneself, from the person one has been in previous incarnations. There are those who do not believe in reincarnation. To them, we would say that surely they will not reincarnate, as they have nothing within them which will survive death. Only karma will have the last word, because even if they do not reincarnate, they must, in one way or another, pay their pending debts to nature. For a loafer, it is very simple to discredit Hermeticism without taking the trouble to study and practice it. To deny Hermeticism without knowing its true dimensions is simply criticizing something unknown, reproaching those who accept a certain idea in blind faith is justified. But at the same time, it is correct to condemn those who reject an idea without rational analysis. To illustrate this procedure so common among people, we will use the word anti-faith. to describe an irrational belief in the opposite of what is being examined. This phenomenon certainly prevents all impartiality, which is the basis of deep and true reflection. It is harmful to have faith, but it is just as bad to have blind anti-faith. It is true that many men are champions of faith or anti-faith, but absolute lack true intelligence, awareness. We maintain that only a brain is a complete state of alertness can gradually establish the basis from which a conscious, awakened, and unprogrammed intelligence can be born. This intelligence, due to its acuteness, can have access to genuine knowledge. Knowledge has many degrees, and to reach the highest degree requires a mystical process, but one which is in no way miraculous, but rather is logical and natural. This justifies the use of the term illumination as referred to full clarification of a spiritualized intelligence. We can state in good conscience that genuine knowledge is something prohibited to sapiens, and it can only be attained when the individual achieves mutation from sapiens to stellar man, thus acquiring the full rights of knowledge. Sapiens must be content with the relative knowledge of the semi-wise, which lights up the material world and obscures the internal panorama, thus making the knowledge of scientists useless. Matter is meant to serve man, not the other way around. No, nevertheless, actual reality shows us as a dehumanized world with imitations of men who can unconditionally serve matter, which mercilessly absorbs their vital energy. There is a strange symbiosis between matter and sapiens in the sense that matter needs sapiens as sapiens needs matter. Thus, sapiens has, in spite of all we have said, a greater difference from the all animal. He possesses the divine spark, placing him at a higher level than the animal. Although the strength of the divine spark may be dim in an individual, the spark provokes in him an important phenomenon, the radiation of higher awareness. Although in a microscopic degree, consciousness is the radiant energy of the divine spark or essence, and is a force which constantly surrounds and is irradiated, irradiated by men. In the same way that light and heat are given off by the sun. In this way, any person will give off an energy similar to that of animal magnetism, but of a divine nature, or in other terms, this magnetism possesses a higher vibration. The Hermetist works on this small divine spark to make it grow in strength and power through the different phases of initiation. The uninitiated is similar to the light of a candle in his awareness. On the other hand, the initiate, according to his degree of development, can reach a likeliness of the sun. This illustrates the profound secret of the children of the sun. By virtue of his awareness, the individual projects this energy towards all he can touch with his hand and towards all that come within his field of influence. An artist concentrates his awareness on his work, and this force is that which brings about a special experience and transmits an energy which impresses our psychic favorably or negatively. A master carpenter or cabinet maker puts his soul into his work, whether he wishes to do so or not, as this is inevitable. Thus, sapiens work giving consciousness matter, that is, spiritualization, or giving subtly to denseness. Consider who might capitalize on this force and prohibit and profit from this phenomenon. Still, as sapiens accomplish this entirely unconsciously, it cannot be said that this is an independent voluntary act. It is more something which happens because it is thus decreed or programmed. Due to this ignorance, instead of man being owner and master of matter, matter subjugates man, extraditing his conscious energy, which by impregnating the elemental bodies becomes incorporated into them. Conscious energy has intrinsic properties and others that are contingent on the result of fusion with a specific person. This is explained in the following example. 1. Conscious energy is pure and chastite in itself. It constitutes the body of God, an infinitesimal fraction of this eminent from the supreme creator, and took a body in a specific person. 2. Incarnated awareness. Being incarnated in a certain individual, this energy, which is pure and chastite in itself, is modified according to the individual's basic vibratory tone, culture, self control, discipline, and behavior. And on becoming incarnated, the conscious energy in example 2 can follow two paths. A. Superior incarnated awareness. This existence is the infinitesimal portion of the human race. Pure spiritual and chastite conscious energy acquires through the intelligent experience of the individual the notion of good and evil, the human knowledge, which exists only in a material body. This essence therefore reaches the human intelligence, preserving divine intelligence. In this case, the higher purpose in the life of man is accomplished. B. Inferior incarnated awareness. This exists in the great human mass. Conscious energy is blemished and degraded as it is. Superior nature is corporated by or corrupted by slavery to a perverted beast due to the deviated intelligence of sapiens, who is blind and ignorant and who lives only to satisfy his own instincts. The awareness, still high in himself, becomes inferior in its manifestation, radiating an energy sustained by the individual's base passions, impulses, and tendencies. In his day to day existence, the individual imbues his material possessions with his conscious energy. When that energy inadvertently separates from him, it acts independently with its own intelligence, which can be taken from the individual. The intelligence gives tone and color to pure awareness, since each person has impulses, fears, desires, ambitions, and sentiments which manifest themselves as uncontrolled passions. This force imprints a directive onto a conscious energy and becomes an absolutely uncontrollable path for the individual from the moment this force leaves him to become incorporated into any material structure. This is the reason why a person can become completely enslaved by his material possessions, which makes use of him absorbing more and more of his awareness. There are many science fiction stories which cover the subject of machines, robots, and other objects, which suddenly acquire their own intelligence and consequent autonomy in their actions. Actually, these books have endeavored to hint at certain ideas in order to make the reader think and very gradually prepare them for more complex designs. At times, reality is disguised as fiction in order that there should be no opposition from the masses, who abstinently refute all things not forming part of the orthodox culture records of humanity. The truth is that this phenomenon exists and no one is free from it. The machine has turned into a monster that is not going to devour him because it's already doing so. For example, the automobile is a great use to its owner, but we must ask ourselves who drives who? Who is the owner and who is the servant? It is the automobile who carries its owner as an obedient slave, or is it the owner who must work long hours to feed them and maintain his car and drive it in order to fulfill the reason for its existence? Driving over the roads are great at great speeds, devouring the earth's blood petroleum. As another example, let us observe those who have pets, such as a dog, and how people work to maintain and keep them like their own children. Many times, a sapien can be seen pulling a dog tied to a chain, and we can ask ourselves who is leading whom. With domestic animals, conscious energy explains the mysterious affinity between a dog and his master, and to how they, due to unexplainable circumstances, acquire an amazing likeness, which at times is limited only to conduct rules of conduct, but at other times goes as far as physical likeness. The explanation is simple. The animal, just as the automobile or other objects of personal use, absorb the conscious energy of its master, which is, as we already know, explained, stained or impregnate with the person's individual characteristics, and in this way shapes the animal's appearance. On some occasions, the conscious energy displaced by the individual takes body in a machine which belongs to him and then reacts destructively against its owner because his passions are indiscriminately destructive. The story of Dr. Frankenstein is symbolic of this explanation, and it must be noted that emanated awareness is a virtual child of man from which it originated. Many times there are persons who are destroyed by their own work and not by any karmic reaction of their acts. The passionate or destructive force they generate endeavors it in its unconscious manifestation to destroy its own father. Something very similar occurs with children of the flesh, who, from the earliest age, develop all kinds of bad habits, tantrums, whims, or hysterical crying bouts when their wishes are not immediately gratified. We cannot blame these creatures as they are only giving way to the defects incorporated in them by their sires through incarnation of their consciousness. All the defects not controlled by their parents, all hidden tendencies of an in, instinctive type take form in the children. It is due to this that the Bible says the sin of the father will be visited upon the children. Subs, I can't even talk. Subsequently, the parents find that they cannot control or guide their children, but on the contrary, many times it is the children who exercise veritable tyranny on the authors of their days. This situation is no more than a reputation of past conditions, the impossibility of controlling internal energy which bursts forth in the form of passion. The same then occurs with children, and in this case, energy rebels against the parents from another physical body. Continuing the commentary on machines, we can point out the extraordinary influence the operator has over a computer, which becomes very sensitive to the vital state and condition of the operator. This occurs because the machine becomes impregnated with the conscious energy of the operator, which the acts independently but following the basic directives of the operator's vibratory states. We can also point out a phenomenon affecting all drivers and truck owners. This is based on their close identification with the vehicle, which is a source of work and subsistence. I refer to the strange reactions these machines may have under certain circumstances, producing all kinds of absolutely illogical and incredible mechanical defects. In some cases, this reaction reaches the point where the owner of the machine is ruined. There is also the case of machines that have had an accident or collision, and when the owner of the driver is changed, the accident is repeated with practically the same characteristics. The case of doomed jewels that bring back bad luck to their owners, to the extent that they inexorably suffer violent death, is well known. All this can be explained by the invisible child consciousness, which inhabits material objects and which was created by one of the owners of the objects, and perhaps by the one who made it. The same thing happens with firearms, which, after having caused death, become dangerous as they are impregnated with the vibrations of the tragedy and the person who caused it. From this comes the saying, firearms are loaded by the devil, because a revolver, which has death vibrations, awakens similar vibrations in its owner through a process of magnetic induction. Thus, this person, without realizing it, makes use of the firearm at the least provocation of emotional disturbance. We can conclude that this subject by citing the case of plants and flowers, as it has proven that they are extremely sensitive to the influence of their owner's consciousness, caretakers, and whoever is frequently near them. Any person with love for a plant or a tree and who talks to them as if speaking to a person will be able to witness the extraordinary increase in the beauty, health, and vitality of the specimen, since the entire subject has been elaborated to explain the impossibility of real knowledge under the conditions of ordinary awareness. We wish to point out the enormous power of matter upon sapiens. He cannot emancipate his intelligence from the hypnotic influence of matter, which doubly affects him. One, by projection of mass energy of the individual. Two, by the projection of previously absorbed conscious energy on the individual. Matter has an energy of its own, which strongly radiates and affects man in a certain manner, tied to his material possessions. He becomes unable to visualize any way of being other than the conservation and multiplication of the property or assets he possesses. On the other hand, corporeal matter has a decisive influence on intelligence, either making it acute or clouding it. If the body's matter maintains a low and dense vibration, the intelligence inexorably declines. This is the hidden reason why Moses, possessor of certain hermetic secrets, forbade his followers to eat pork, as this animal has a particular dense and low vibratory state, which would therefore produce a deterioration in intellectual capacity. This is also the basis for vegetarian system. And although there's much to be said about this, anyone who has abstained from meat for some time will prove that his thoughts have become noticeably clearer. The conscious energy radiated by the masses affect the individual in a hypnotic manner, since this imposes the influence of a different vibration on him, which then impels him to act accordingly to particular vibration, a gift given to us due to a social obligation by someone with evil intentions can negatively influence our health, intelligence, and destiny. Summing up, sapiens permanently live in a somnambulistic condition, which keeps him dormant, making it impossible for him to attain real knowledge and serious damaging his awareness and intelligence. Each day, what he knows increases at the cost of his human essence, which is reduced in direct relationship to the existence and potency of his cerebral programming. This programming converts him into a veritable biological robot with automatic uh, physiological, instinctive, emotional, and intellectual reactions. The individual's ideas, opinions, or sentiments loses all human validity, and he is converted into a mere circuit um, activated by external influences. These external influences are thus converted into disconnected elements of the individual's internal reactions, a mere echo of the cultural concert and the emotional and instinctive tide of humanity. All right, that's the end of chapter 6, the illusion of true knowledge. And next time we'll start on chapter 7, illusion of freedom. All right. Again, I hope you guys enjoyed this chapter. And again, if you would like to guest read, contact David Barry at his email address, davidbarry80@googlemail.com. And if you don't want to show your face, you don't have to. You can just record your voice for the book, and you can put some spectacular stuff behind you. All right. Well, I hope you guys have a favorable and beautiful day. Until next time. Bye.